Hey, what's up guys? It's Matt here with Matthew Voodoo Photography. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about upgrading your gear and just gear in general, right? So I have another video queued up about choosing your first camera upgrading. And I actually put that video off because I wanted to get more experience using different camera systems, etc. It felt kind of silly for me to recommend to you guys what to buy if I've never used it. So I'm just going to be recommending it based on what others said, which doesn't make sense in my opinion, right? So today I want to read to you guys, or I want to do an overview with you guys about an article that I saw in Petapixel that really caught my interest, as well as I have a little list here of my pros and cons and why I upgraded my camera a couple of years ago to mirrorless. So I jumped on the mirrorless hype train a couple of years ago, but thankfully, my then girlfriend, who is my wife now actually, she made me do a little bit of a level-headed approach as to why I wanted to upgrade rather than just wanting new shiny things. So I had a list of things that annoyed me about my DSLR and really things that took away from the joy of shooting. I'm going to go through those with the intention of, maybe giving you guys a little bit of a level-headed approach of a middle ground between upgrading and not upgrading if you actually need to upgrade, because you see, every time gear comes out, the media responses, the companies send the gear out to, the YouTube influencers and just the media personnel across many platforms, that being blog, YouTube, and all of these other platforms, right, to review the equipment, to obviously in turn for that to reflect in sales. They wouldn't be sending out the equipment out of their good hearts. Not saying that channels are paid off, it's not about paying off. Somebody could give a very honest review about a piece of equipment and not be paid off by the company, and it still be profitable to the company, right? That's just a little by the way. But I want to talk to you guys today about why I'm not upgrading, why this person is not upgrading, why I upgraded, and where you should be and what you should do. So if you have that itch, your bank account is itching, your hands are itching to spend money, you have things in your cart and you're like, no, I need mirrorless. You've been watching all these videos, DSLRs are dead, DSLRs are the past, they are dinosaurs, and it's just so silly. So let's go through some of the author's points, and I'll go through some of mine, and then hopefully I could get you back on a level-headed path so that you don't spend money that you don't need to. So the author starts off by saying, that they believe that mirrorless is, a little too hyped up. And while I tend to agree, mirrorless does has its pros and its cons, right? The important thing is that the author evaluated if it make proper financial sense. So if it made sense to sell his current equipment and to move over to the mirrorless system, what is his upfront cost, right, to replace the current professional gear that he has, and then is the result of replacing that gear measurable to the investment that you put in, right? So he has his criteria. He knows what he shoots. He's a pro photographer. He or she, sorry. I don't know if it's a he or she. I couldn't pronounce the person's name, so apologies. So the author compared the EOS R5 to the Canon 5D Mark IV, and I just put a link in the video description and you guys could go read it. And, there's an improvement between the two, but it's not that much. And for his or her workload, it's not going to make that much of a difference, right? The things that make mirrorless very, very attractive to me is the things that this author does not use. So this brings me to my first point. Know what's your use case. What are you going to use the equipment for? Another big thing is muscle memory, right? When you move from one system to another, there is a learning curve. Regardless of if you want to accept it or not, you have to learn the new system. You have to learn the different button layouts. You have to learn different features. And if I remember correctly, I knew every button on my DSLR, I knew what it did. I didn't need to look at the screen, right? Everything happened on my fingers. But when I moved to Sony, it was tough because I had to relearn everything, right? But the benefits of mirrorless outweighed that for me. And this is a very important one. Let this one sink in, guys. The author said, and I completely agree, switching would not make you a better photographer. Now keep in mind, this is in the context of photography. I'm going to talk about videography a little bit later, but this is in the context of photography. Switching from a 5D Mark IV to EOS R5 isn't necessarily going to make you a better photographer. You are the one that controls it. Just like having an expensive vehicle does not make you a better driver, right? You're still a sucky driver if you have a Mercedes or if you have a B15 and you can't drive. That's just the reality of it. And then the author ended off about, they will inevitably switch to mirrorless because I think the market, and this is where I'm taking over here and just putting this aside. I believe the market, I don't know if it's just because of the technology or if it's because of the market hype as well, caused by influencers. That's one of the reasons, or if just mirrorless technology is just that much better than the old DSLR counterpart technology. I don't know. But it does seem that the market is shifting in that direction, and these brands like Nikon, Canon, the big players, Sony, Panasonic, and a bunch of other guys, whoever else, sorry if I didn't call your brand, they are moving towards mirrorless systems, right? Fujifilm is mirrorless as well. So yeah, it seems like the industry is moving that way, and that's fine. So let's go over why I chose mirrorless versus why I think it doesn't make sense to choose mirrorless. Let's go over the reasons why I think it shouldn't choose mirrorless, right? For photography, the hype. Don't choose mirrorless just because of the hype. Don't choose mirrorless just because you see some video that's titled mirrorless is the future, DSLRs are dead. Don't do that. Don't choose mirrorless if you don't understand your costs. When it comes to Nikon and Canon and even Sony, but Sony to a lesser extent because they've been in the market a longer time. When it comes to mirrorless, Nikon and Canon, specifically I think, are pretty new. So that means the lens selection is not it's not open, right, for third-party manufacturers to begin with, like Sigma and Tamron. And it's only first-party glass, and it's expensive glass. Right, I think Canon has some more reasonable glass, and they're bringing out more and more and more. But you have to consider the upfront costs. Lenses, as I talk about costs on lenses, right? There's always that analogy: you marry your lenses, but you date your camera, right? Your camera is a casual relationship. You could have a lens for 15 years, but most people may just upgrade their camera before that time. All right, so you might go through 3 or 4 cameras in that time, but your lenses, especially if you have good glass, that's gonna last you a while. If you're doing photography only, mirrorless may not, like the benefits of mirrorless may not be of direct impact to you, especially if you do a lot of studio work. Also, I wanted to clarify about the author's shooting, right? What the author shoots. Now, I mentioned that for the author's use cases, mirrorless is necessary. So when I say that, I mean the benefits of mirrorless don't necessarily come into play if you're shooting in a studio environment. You're fixed on a tripod or on a stand, or it's a very, very controlled environment in terms of focusing and posing. Everything's controlled and composed. Also, you're also shooting at a very small aperture like f8 or f11, right, just to get the most detail and clarity out of your images. A lot of studio photographers shoot at f8 and f11. You would notice that a lot of street photographers, or a lot of portrait photographers who do environmental portraits shoot at lower apertures that are like f1.4, f1.8, f2, f2.8, because we want that separation. We want to make the subject pop in the frame, unless, you know, that environment has to do something where we want it in focus. You know, it's very deliberate when we, at least I would hope so, but for me it's very deliberate when I blur something out or when I let it show in terms of the background. The benefits of mirrorless come when you're shooting at f1.2, f1.4, and you're doing continuous focus on a moving subject. That's when mirrorless takes off. That's when mirrorless becomes much more of an advantage over the DSLR counterpart. And that's one of the big reasons that I went to mirrorless, right? So just wanted to clear that point up. Let's go into some reasons why mirrorless. For me specifically, hybrid shooting. I wanted a camera that I could record my YouTube videos with for all the channels that I have, as well as use it for photography. And DSLRs, especially Nikon DSLRs, which is what I shot before, their autofocus in video sucked. It sucked. Excellent photography camera, but because it used this old contrast based autofocus, it would always haunt on my face. It would always go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So what I'd have to do is, when I'm setting up for a video, I'd have to manually focus, like put a placement for me, manually focus on that placement, come sit in one spot, and if I move too much, if I move forward, it's going to be out of focus. If I move backward, it's going to be out of focus. And I just wanted something to follow my face, you know, just track me. For Canons, that's less of an issue because Canon has better autofocus in video. They have the dual pixel stuff in video for their DSLRs. A lot of their DSLRs have it. So a big thing for me was autofocus accuracy. Now, I never had pro gear for DSLRs. I never owned a D810 or D850. What annoyed me was having the camera tell me that's it in focus. I get that beep, right? Shooting at 1.8 or 2 and even 3.5 depending. I get that beep, and when I take the picture, it's not in focus. And I hated that. I hated the fact that the face or the eyes was not 100% in focus. And that's something that Mirrorless sorted out for me, and that's something that Sony sorted out for me really well, because their eye autofocus was just ridiculous. And that allowed me to take more dynamic shots. And instead of having to, you know, back button focus and recompose because your tracking on those cameras kind of sucked, I just let eye autofocus do its thing, and I would just look at composition instead. And it was just so beautiful. I loved it. I really loved it. Me transitioning to mirrorless wasn't a big thing. I didn't have $10,000 in gear. If you're in photography and you have entry-level gear, DSLR stuff, make a list of the things that annoy you and find some things that fix it. But know when you're just being nitpicky, right? It shouldn't prevent you from taking pictures, as it did me. I blamed my gear, and you shouldn't do that. Learn from my mistakes. Learn from my stupidity. Don't blame your gear, because having a new camera didn't make me a better photographer in any way. It's learning about light and composition and posing. It's learning about all these things that make you a better photographer. I've never had a client, it's only photographers that ask this question. I've never had a client that asks me, oh, what camera you took that picture with? It looks really pretty. Or I've never had, you know, anybody who's a non-photographer say, wow, that is an amazing camera shot. Good job, camera. No, that's not how it works. You're the operator of the camera, right? It's like if it's like if you're doing a race. If you're doing a rally, you can have the fastest car, but if your car drive, I go back to this driving analogy. But if your car drive, you're not going to win the race, The fast car isn't necessarily going to make you any better at what you do. So keep this in mind, guys, right? Keep this in mind. And what I really want to do, I'm not just rambling here. My point is, get out there and shoot. Regardless of what gear you have, don't let that keep you back, right? But if you do find it annoying you and it kills your desire to take pictures, then do two things. Find encouragement and incentive in the art and not the equipment. Do that. Don't be like me. You know, if I had the opportunity and I had the finances, I was telling my wife recently, if I had both of those, I would have gone back to a basic DSLR and one lens. That's what I would have done. Go all the way back. Maybe an old used D7100 like I had before, and 185mm prime, and go just have fun with it and take portraits like crazy. And let me be a lesson to you, so you don't waste money. Lenses are 100% more important than your camera. If you don't get anything else from this video, if you dislike this video, fine. The truth is, your lenses are more important. And I stopped looking at the gear as a limitation and realized that I was the limitation all along. And this is the purpose of my channel, really. I want to show you guys tutorials. I want to show you guys a little bit, to get into my brain a little bit, and to help you guys with some of the insecurities that I have, so that if you guys have it as well, that I could encourage you to go out there and take pictures, to get clients, to make a name for yourself in this photography industry, and also to behave well as well, you know. I think, yeah, we need to be very careful as photographers with our conduct and stuff like that. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time. I had this mango at the side of the desk while I was doing the video. It smells so good.